Wassail! Welcome to Rune Revival. If you know anything about runes, you've probably heard of Elder Fuþark. After recent finds, its oldest inscriptions now date back to the 1st century. It was arguably the original Germanic script used throughout much of Northern Europe. It continued to be used by Germanic speakers as far east as the Black Sea until church authorities became suspicious of it and introduced an alternative, which was quickly adopted. From Elder Fuþark sprung two divergent traditions. The Anglo-Frisian Futhark took the approach of developing new runes until the original 24 had expanded to include an entire extra at, and ended up with 33 by the time its use in the English manuscript tradition ceased. Because each at has 8 runes, the final rune was deemed to be a centering rune, while the 4 atir were paired with the 4 cardinal directions, among a variety of other associations. Although there are some minor differences between Anglo-Frisian runes as used in the mainland European lowlands and the Anglo-Saxon runes used on the British Isles, most scholars are content to discuss them as a single tradition, except for when highly specific details need to be distinguished. Its sister script of Younger Futhark took the opposite approach, as the Vikings removed runes for similar sounds until they were left with just 16. However, they preserved the 3 atir by dividing them into an initial group of 6, followed by 2 atir of 5 runes each. Continuing their reductionist tradition, several of the original long branch runes were truncated to create short twig runes, which eventually also took the form of staveless runes. However, all of these are part of the Younger Futhark tradition. What many people are unaware of is that Anglo-Saxon runes did have a descendant in the form of Macromanic runes. Unlike in the East, in the West the Church made some effort not only to preserve runes, but to further develop them, although certain hierarchs opposed this idea. In what's now France, a Benedictine monk turned archbishop made the first reordering of the Anglo-Frisian runes to match the Latin alphabet. He also borrowed a few from Elder Fuþark and added some of his own inventions so that every Latin letter would have an equivalent rune. I don't know if there is a patron saint of runes, but if there is, then I'd guess Saint Rabanus Maurus is it. He's probably the only Christian leader that could in some sense be called a rune master. The odd naming of Macromanic runes comes from Bavaria, where scholars misidentified their origin. Around 3 centuries after the Macromanic experiment failed, medieval scribes in the runic homelands again took interest in them. As Younger Futhark was still in use in Scandinavia at the time, they took it as their starting point, but again rearranged the order to match that of the Latin alphabet. They also adapted the characters to fill in the numerous gaps they found. This gave rise to the famous stung runes, stung meaning dotted, of which at least 8 were in comparatively common use at one time or another. Medieval runes gained a degree of popularity in Northern Europe to the point where, even as runes began to die out again, they found a stronghold in a remote part of Sweden. That's where Dalecarlian runes remained in use until extremely recently, with the last rune master only dying in the 1930s and his longest surviving student living up into the 1980s. In an interesting twist of events, in the Dales runes were typically used to write Swedish rather than the local Elfdalian language. Presumably this would be because writing is for relaying messages, and messages tend to be written in languages that larger numbers of people can understand. Currently, the rune board only lacks 3 characters to be able to type in Dalecarlian runes. Unfortunately, those characters aren't currently included in Unicode, which prevents them from being displayed consistently across different devices and fonts. we're currently preparing a proposal for their inclusion in Unicode. If you would use those runes if they were available, please leave a comment indicating your support, as it would help us to demonstrate that there is a usage demand for them. Thank you. On a side note, Turkic runes are not related to Germanic runes at all. Rather, they may have originated as far away as Mongolia, but just so happen to have some degree of visual resemblance to those found in Europe. Consequently, some scholars reject the use of the term runes for this script, and its more famous daughter script too. That being Hungarian runes, which have obtained some cultural support in parts of Hungary in recent times. Ironically, the mistaken assumption that they are Germanic in origin has caused other Hungarians to oppose their use on nationalist grounds. Finally, numerous alternative forms and variations have been used at times, such as those found on the Frank's casket. Runic revivalists, such as J.R.R. Tolkien, have at times invented their own too. Some may class pseudo-runes like Armenian runes in that category, but at this point we're well out of the historical traditions. What are your thoughts on the matter? Should pseudo-runes count as real runes or not? What about the other non-Germanic runes? Where do you draw the boundaries? For now, I hope this new microphone is working better. If it is, you can look forward to more videos soon.